choirs in the house, I think. Cool. All right. It's been a while for me. So welcome to the DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church here in Naperville, Illinois. Whether you are online or right here, we are thrilled to have you here. My name is Kaya Iverson. I serve on the board of the church. And we just have some, typical stuff here to say, about us as UUs. We hold with our many paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another in our spiritual and religious journeys while holding ourselves in covenant through our shared 7 principles, which might become something very different later this year at General Assembly. The mission of this church is to gather in an inclusive community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world toward fairness, love, and compassion. No easy feat there, right? So wherever you are on life's journey, and wherever you are in the world, you are welcome here. Now, it turns out it is May. That means educational question and answer sessions are going to be held to review subjects that will come up at the annual meeting on June 4th. You're excited, right? Yeah. All right, we're going to talk about bylaws and other cool stuff, right? Yeah. I know you were thinking about it just last night, like, oh man, I want to talk bylaws. So it's coming. The first session to review and explain some of the changes to the bylaws is this Wednesday at 7 on Zoom. You'll find the content that we're talking about for the annual meeting on the annual meeting page on the church website. And look for an email this week that'll have more information about that session and other ones. So, wow, man, bylaws. Ooh, it's exciting. So if you're online, I would love for you to greet each other via chat, in the chat screen. So please do that, because now these guys are going to turn to each other and greet each other and have a good old time, and we'll never be able to calm them down again. So go ahead.
This is our youth ensemble for 21st, and I'm really proud of them, and they're going to sing a lovely little song called Rainbow Land, and it's all about loving and accepting everybody, kind of like one of our principles. And some of you may have heard of this song. It was in the news because it was programmed at the music program for a school in Wisconsin. And some people in the district objected to the song because of the word rainbow. So they banned it and disciplined the teacher. And but I'm proud to say that a band of UUs from the community came to the school board meeting and sang the song for them, so they could see what it was really about. And I hope you enjoy the words because we're projecting them, because it does have a lot of words. It was done by Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus, who is her goddaughter. And so they sing really fast. So there's a lot of words for you to digest, but they're really beautiful words. So I hope you enjoy.
Living in a rainbow land, I light this chalice today for our 17th Unitarian Universalist principle. We believe in the respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part.
My goodness, what a way to start a worship service. Woo! Yes. Whew. Welcome to this place of love, of communal flourishing. We enter this space to open our hearts, to expand our minds, and to see the sacred within each other. Come, let us worship together. Please join me by rising in body or spirit to sing hymn number 207.
Please remain standing and recite the covenant with me. We come together to affirm our relationship with one another, our shared commitment to our Unitarian Universalist principles, and to our committed Unity Church community. We recognize our agency and our connective power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous in relationship with each other, so that we might transform ourselves and the world.
Our vision of beloved community is rooted in the relationships we have with each other, our world, and creation. Each week we share our joys and concerns. This week, our flowers were given by Karen Campbell in memory of her dear Aunt Evelyn in honor of her birthday on May 9th, and to her beloved dad, Henry Scott Jr., in honor of his birthday on May 10th. May their memories and their love be a joy to you and your family, Karen. Last week, Monday, was the 1-year anniversary of the day that you all called me to be your minister. Not to be confused with August 1st, which is actually my official start date as your minister. It is possible, by the way, to fall in love with you all each and every day a little bit more. Singing songs about peace and love and joy is, it feels in this moment to be very much the opposite of what has happened this week in our world. There have been 3 mass shootings this past week, 2 in Texas and 1 in Atlanta. And I still don't know what to say to you all, because the pain and the suffering and the injustice that is present that causes someone who is so rage-filled to resort to violence, I don't know that there are words to address that. But I do know that communities like this, like our beloved community, are the ways that we can bring a message of hope and love and joy into the pain that so many in this world experience. I am so grateful for each and every one of you as we work together to bring justice to this world. I also wish to share news of a sibling congregation. The UU Church in Springfield, Illinois had a fire this past week. They're still doing assessment on the building damages, but please hold that community in your hearts, because they too are a community that can bring hope to this world, one of our sibling communities. Please join me in a prayer. This prayer is a Catholic prayer. Oh, and I have one more joy. I apologize. Kay Richards is coming home from the hospital tomorrow and is feeling great. Our joy is with both you, with Kay and Mark. Please join me in prayer. Spirit of justice, break open our hearts. Break them wide open. Let anger pour through like strong storms, cleansing us of complacency. Let courage pour through like spring storms, flooding out fear. Let zeal pour through like blazing summer sun, filling us with passion. Force of justice, grant me anger at what is, courage to do what must be done, passion to break down the walls of injustice, and build a land flowing with milk and honey for God's beloved, God's special love, God's poor ones. Spirit of justice, break open our hearts.
Giving of our treasure is how we reciprocate the many gifts we are given by this community. Your contribution supports the programs and operations of DuPage UU Church. Giving is also how we live our lives in the world. Each month we share our offerings with an organization nominated by the congregation and selected by the special offering team. During May, our special offering will benefit Unsinkable, the BR Royale YMCA, nominated by Bridget Coleman. Unsinkable's mission is to make swim lessons more accessible and affordable to local children in the foster care system. Water safety is a critical life skill, and being safe and comfortable in the water helps build kids' self-esteem and enables both independence and fun. Many of us take for granted that kids will learn how to swim, but oftentimes foster children not only lack this opportunity, but are actively afraid of the water. Since its founding in 2017, it has provided 93 sessions of swim lessons to 25 youth at the Glen Ellen Y, and that's despite the long COVID-related break. It expanded to the Rockford Y in January of this year and has already served 17 foster kids in over 22 swim lessons. This program serves kids in our community and adjacent communities, and it was founded by a DUC family that saw a specific need in a specific population and attempted to fill that need. Kids in the foster care system have so much stacked against them, and this is a concrete way to make them safer and hopefully happier. And a small amount of money can have a great impact in their lives. The offering is given and received in a spirit of generosity and gratitude.
Invite our children or the young heart to come forward for a story. So this is one of my favorite stories. It's called Uno's Garden. And for the adults, you can follow along. The slides are up there. But they're such amazing pictures that I feel like I have to tell you, bring the book for you. The animals go one by one, 100 plants, and then there were none. And all the while the buildings double, this numbers game adds up to trouble. But if you count with utmost care and trust me that they all are there, you'll go from 10 to nothing, then the whole way back again. Uno arrived in the forest on a beautiful day at the beginning of spring. There to welcome him were 10 magnificent Moopaloops and one completely ordinary Snortlepig. Uno loved the forest so much, he decided to live there. Uno climbed above the trees. The forest seemed to go on forever. Swinging through the branches were 9 leaping lumpy bums and the completely ordinary Snortlepig. Others followed Uno. They loved the forest too. They built houses and boats, watched by 8 feathered Frinklepods, and the Snortlepig, of course. Uno began work on a little garden. The fishermen's children played games among the trees. They counted 7 playful puddle butts, plus 1 Snortlepig. A little village grew. Some hunters went into the forest looking for sneaky Snagglebites. There were 6, but the hunters didn't catch them or the Snortlepig. Tourists came. They saw 5 timid tumbletops, but that was all. Uno kept working his garden. The village became a town. Then the railway was built. Excited passengers watched for wild animals. They caught a glimpse of 4 grazing gondolopes. And what was that other funny-looking creature back there? The Snortlepig. Yeah. Yes. The town had become a city. A team of scientists arrived to study the animals. 3 flippered flipper flaps was all they found. Those animals have silly names, right? The city grew bigger and bigger, and the forest grew smaller and smaller. Some workers came across 2 pointy pricklebacks. They had never seen anything like them. A lone fisherman sat his line in the river. He caught a car tire, several old boots, and a cold. He didn't see the Snortlepigs. In fact, no one had seen one for so long, people weren't even sure they existed. One gray morning, the people of the city woke up, looked out over the endless buildings, and were sad. Yeah, that's a pretty name tag, Freya. Why do we live in a place like this? They asked themselves. There are no trees. So they left. The city was dark and abandoned. Uno opened his door and looked out. Sitting there in the garden among the plants that Uno had saved was a Snortlepig, completely ordinary in every way except that it was there. The Snortlepig lived in Uno's garden for many years. The city crumbled, forgotten. The Snortlepig grew old and died, but the garden lived on. Uno's children continued to care for the little collection of trees and plants, and slowly the forest returned. The children kept a diary of their discoveries. 2 pointy pricklebacks, 3 flippered flipper flaps, 4 grazing gondolopes, 5 timid tumbletops. Over the years, Uno's grandchildren added to the list. 6 sneaky Snagglebites, 7 playful puddlebutts. Their grandchildren added to the list too. 8 feathered Frinklepods, 9 leaping lumpy bums, 10 magnificent Moopaloops. And on a beautiful day, at the very beginning of spring, the forest and the city found themselves in perfect balance. Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Katya. Stories we're told of the days when an extraordinary creature had lived in Uno's garden. The children listened with wide eyes, and they never stopped believing that one day they would see a real live snortle pig for themselves. We're going to listen to Steve, okay?
Every year, since 2009, on the first Saturday in May, thousands of people around the globe participate in World Labyrinth Day as a moving meditation for world peace and celebration of the labyrinth experience. Many walk as one at 1 local time to create a rolling wave of peaceful energy passing from one time zone to the next. So I bring this up because we have a labyrinth on the church property. And although we did not participate as a site this year, I'm hoping we can in the future. In fact, during this afternoon's workday, the labyrinth is one of the areas in the yard marked for cleanup. Our labyrinth was created on July 18th, 2015, as an Eagle Scout project by church youth Zach Newsel, and that's Zach in the red t-shirt. In September 2020, church youth Josh Culver incorporated refreshing the paths of the labyrinth with landscape fabric and mulch, and also building new park benches as his Eagle Scout project. So Rev Mandy just told us the story of Uno's garden, and it spoke about the balance of nature and how, when it gets out of balance, there may be a toll taken upon the plants and wildlife of the earth. I want to include the importance in finding balance of self. I believe that one way for a person to return to balance is through the meditative process of walking a labyrinth. And you don't have to actually walk a labyrinth. You can do a finger labyrinth. If you have a picture, these are on the kids' order service. Also, Mandy has some finger labyrinths that the kids can actually follow along, and they can do labyrinths with their fingers. So if you're not familiar with labyrinths, a labyrinth is used for walking meditation. It is a single winding path from the outer edge in an indirect way to the center. Labyrinths are used worldwide as a way to quiet the mind, calm anxieties, recover balance in life, enhance creativity, and encourage meditation, insight, self-reflection, and self-reduction. The practice of labyrinth walking integrates the body with the mind and spirit. Now, the labyrinth is not a maze. There are no tricks to it and no dead ends. Labyrinths have one path, and one walks the same path going in and coming out. The path is in full view, so there's no concern that you will get lost by walking. Instead, as you walk the path, you can get lost in thought, and in doing so, find yourself. There is no right or wrong way to walk the labyrinth. Do what is right and natural for you while being respectful of others walking. Allow yourself to go to the place your body wants and to go at the pace that your body wants. Try to clear your mind and be open to thoughts and feelings. To prepare, you may want to sit quietly to reflect before beginning your walk. Some people come with questions. Others just want to take time out from our overly connected and busy worlds. And as you walk towards the center, take time to quiet your mind and release your troubles. Become aware of your breathing and relax and move at your own pace. The center is a place of reflection. Pause and stay as long as you like. And when you're ready, begin walking out the same path you followed in. Experience the sense of well-being, healing, calm, or peace. Each labyrinth experience is different. You may feel nothing, or unexpected emotions and memories may surface. Regardless, listen to your body and take the time you need. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. I have another story about balance in nature, and this is the Native American legend about the three sisters. And I have the three sisters right here in my hand. Do you know what they are?
Seeds.
They are seeds. And here, you can pass these around. I have three different seeds. One is a corn seed, the other is a bean seed, and the other is squash, and I happen to have pumpkin. That's pumpkin. Yep. So the first sister is corn, and the second is a bean, and the third is squash, or pumpkin. And there are many different versions of this story, but I want to tell you only one version. A long time ago, there were three sisters who lived together in a field. And these sisters were quite different from one another in their size and way of dressing. The little sister was so young that she could only crawl at first, and she was dressed in green. The second sister wore a bright yellow dress, and she had a way of running off by herself when the sun shone and a soft wind blew in her face. The third was the eldest sister, standing always very straight and tall above the other sisters and trying to protect them. And she wore a pale green shawl, and she had long yellow hair that tossed about her head in the breeze. There was only one way the sisters were all alike, though. They loved each other very dearly, and they always stayed together, and this made them very strong. And one day, a stranger came to the field of the three sisters, a young boy, and he talked to the birds and other animals, and this caught the attention of the three sisters. And late that summer, the youngest and smallest sister disappeared. And her sisters were sad. And again the boy came to the field to gather reeds at the water's edge. And that night the second sister, the one in the yellow dress, disappeared as well. Now the elder sister was the only one left, and she continued to stand in her field. And when the boy saw that she missed her sisters, he brought them all back together, and they became stronger together again. So the reason why this story is important and shows how plants can create balance is that each plant helps the others, and because of this, the harvests were very plentiful and actually did better than if the plants were grown separately. And here is how they work together. Once planted, the corn seed takes on water quickly, and thus the corn is the first to emerge from the ground and is all alone at first. And while the others are getting ready, drinking in water from the soil, the bean seed swells and bursts, and it sends a rootling down deep into the ground. And only after the root is secure does the stem bend to the shape of a hook and then elbows its way out of the ground. The leaves break the soil surface to join the corn, which is already 6 inches tall. Pumpkins and squash take their time. They are the slow sister. It may be weeks before the first stems poke up, and each plant has its own pace and the sequence of their germination, their birth order, and it's important to the relationship and to the success of the crop. The corn is the firstborn and grows straight and stiff and must grow tall quickly. Making a strong stem is its highest priority at first. Making a strong stem, so it needs to be there for its younger sister, the bean, because beans put out a pair of heart-shaped leaves on just a stub of a stem, and then another pair, and then another, all low to the ground. But the beans aren't strong enough to actually stand up straight, so they find the corn and they start to wrap around the corn, and then they focus on growing along with the same speed as the corn, so that as the corn grows higher, the beans grow higher also, holding on to the corn stalk. And just about the time that the corn is knee-high, the bean shoots change its mind, and instead of making leaves, it extends into a long vine and grows along with the corn. So had the corn not started early, the bean vine would strangle it because it would be too heavy for the corn. But if the timing is right, the corn can easily carry the bean. Meanwhile, the squash, the late bloomer of the family, is steadily extending herself over the ground, moving away from the corn and beans, setting up broad-lobed leaves like a stand of umbrellas. The leaves and vines are very bristly, making it so that caterpillars have a second thought about whether they want to eat the leaves because they get poked. And as the leaves grow wider, they shelter the soil at the base of the corn and beans, keeping moisture in and other plants out. The squash acts like a living mulch. Without the corn's support, the beans would be an unruly tangle on the ground, vulnerable to bean-hungry predators. Meanwhile, the squash reduces weeds. But what about the beans? It might seem as if she is taking a free ride in the garden, benefiting from the corn's height and the squash's shade. To see her gift, you have to look underground. The sisters cooperate above ground with the placement of their leaves, carefully avoiding one another's space. And the same is true below the ground. Corn is basically an overgrown grass, so its roots are fine and fibrous. They don't go very deep at all, calling first dibs on incoming rain. And after they've had their drink, the water descends out of the reach of the corn roots, and the deep taproots of the bean are poised to absorb it. And the squash finds its share by moving away from the others, because wherever the squash stem touches the soil, it can put out roots, and then it can collect water away from the corn and the beans. So they share the soil by the same techniques that they share the light, leaving enough for everyone. But there is one thing that they all need that is always in short supply, and that is nitrogen. Beans have the ability to take nitrogen from the atmosphere and turn it into usable nutrients. Beans have little white balls clinging to their roots, and these white balls house the rhizobium bacteria, the nitrogen fixers. Rhizobium can only convert nitrogen when oxygen is not present, so when a bean root meets a microscopic rod of rhizobium, the chemical communications are exchanged and a deal is negotiated. So the bean will grow an oxygen-free nodule to house the bacterium, and in return, the bacterium shares its nitrogen with the plant. And together they can create nitrogen fertilizer that enters the soil and fuels the growth of the corn and the squash. And there are layers upon layers of partnership in the garden between the bean and the bacterium, the bean and the corn and the squash, and ultimately with the people. So it's tempting to imagine that these three are deliberate in working together. Perhaps they are, but the beauty of their partnership is that each plant does what it does in order to increase its own growth. But as it happens, when these individuals flourish, so does the whole. So if you want, you guys can stay here, or you can go back to your seats if you want. And Mandy is going to talk to us.
In 2011, our family moved to North Jersey, and 2 weeks later, a small earthquake welcomed us to the area. 2 months later, we lost our power for 3 days during Hurricane Irene, and then a freak snowstorm followed Irene just 2 months later on Halloween with 10 inches of snow. Our experiences with extreme weather were not over yet, though. In 2012, just a year later, Hurricane Sandy hit the mid-Atlantic states. Technically, Sandy did not make landfall as a hurricane. Its core had cooled, and this is one of the reasons it was labeled as a superstorm rather than a hurricane. While New Jersey experienced hurricane effects, high winds, rain, storm surge, the Appalachians, because yes, the storm reached that far, had heavy snowfall, which then, to a lesser degree, eventually made it to North Jersey. Our family hunkered down in our tiny 900 square foot apartment, losing electricity about 12 hours into the storm. Our fireplace and gas water heater saved us when the snow came a few days later, which also saved us in a way by letting us store frozen food outside, buried in the snow. It took a week, but the electricity did come on. We were lucky. Most of the surrounding towns waited at least 2, sometimes even 4 weeks. Our church waited close to 6 weeks, actually, to get electricity. Our children remember Hurricane Sandy as mostly fun, sleeping in the living room with the fireplace, hanging out with each other, playing games. Our neighbors would get together and grill. then join us for game night in our house by candlelight. I suppose in a way it was fun. It's not often that we are forced to disconnect and just focus on ourselves and survival, albeit privileged survival. Yet, Hurricane Sandy is an example of how impossible it can seem when we think about climate change. The enormity of the storm and its damage and our powerlessness to stop it feels overwhelming. And Hurricane Sandy also revealed the intersectionality of injustice in the ways that people of color and those who are poor were more deeply impacted by the storm and by climate change. It took close to 4 months for the trains to start moving again because so much debris had fallen on them, and that significantly impacted people whose only means of transportation was the train. In the face of massive natural disasters, buying an electric vehicle, eating less meat, and turning off your lights seems insignificant. As Uno showed us in his garden, our unimpeded growth has devastating effects for non-human living beings. Does that mean we give up? We just let it come at us? Bringing balance to our planet is about bringing balance to our lives. What we wish to see in the world is what we need to live in our lives. While our small acts of conservation and care might not turn back Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy like storms from making landfall, they do help us enact what we wish to see change and who we wish to be in the world. While small against the force of climate change, one of the many ways that I counter climate change, and even more counter injustice in our world, is through language. Sayyid Hossein Nasir, an Arabic philosopher, Dr. Lynn White, may he rest in peace, a history professor, and Sally McFade, also may she rest in peace, an eco-feminist theologian, are all part of a group of academics who have worked or are working on eco-theology, the study of our theological understanding of religion and nature. One of the aspects of their work is to link the language of dominance found in Jewish, Christian, and Muslim holy texts to the ways that we speak, act, and think about creation. The idea that God gave dominion, power over creation to humanity is something that eco-theology argues is not true. Indigenous peoples, as we saw in the story that Steve talked about, would likely agree. Eco-theology argues that the language we use impacts how we act and how we see creation. It often suggests the language of stewards or caretakers or partners in our role of partnering with creation. This is a similar language to what Indigenous peoples use to talk about their relationship to creation. They even use the language, at least Indigenous folks here in the United States, use the language of siblings to talk about their plant and animal brethren. Caretaker and steward roles also suggest a partnership, a bringing of balance rather than control or dominance over nature and our non-human siblings. It may be a small change to adjust our language from that of power and authority to partnership and equality, but that language impacts how we talk, act, and think in the world. In fact, that language actually matters to more than just how we address climate change and view creation differently. By moving away from language of dominance, it's possible to address more than just climate change. How we speak in the world impacts us and those around us. Losing language of dominance means we embrace a non-violent way of being in the world. Language of dominance doesn't just impact how we view creation, it impacts how we view the other. Language of dominance is language of violence. how we speak, act, and think in ways that reinforce dominance and control emphasizes our power over people and creation in all systems of injustice, not simply eco-justice. It matters how we speak, think, and act in racial justice, in economic justice, such as when we talk about providing the poor with assistance, but then require them to take drug tests before they're given that assistance. Power over reproductive justice. Power over trans bodies. The feminist Catholic theologian Elizabeth Johnson suggests some balance. She suggests that we call God a she for 2,000 years to bring into balance calling God a he for 2,000 years. I like that idea, but let's apply it to our language of humanity in the world. Correcting our language of dominance lets us embrace the example of the three sisters, each bringing their gifts to make the world better for all, each flourishing as individuals, which then allows the other individuals to flourish. As humans, we too can bring our gifts to creation, partnering and caretaking in ways that bring balance. We're going to do that today. Partnering and caretaking in ways that bring balance, including how we change our language. These things might just right the balance, the scale of justice for all peoples. May it be so. Please rise as you're willing and able to sing hymn number 174, O Earth, You Are Surpassing Fair. As we go forth, may our stewardship of this place and space be shared by us all. And may our language reflect our values of dignity and love for all creation. Jane, what are you doing?
Hey, Jane, can you wait till after the service?
It's over. I'm anxious to get started cleaning inside and out. Aren't you helping?
Yeah, I'm helping. I'm working outside, sprucing up the grounds.
Hey, what's going on?
We're freshening up the church today. Didn't you hear? Fun, fellowship, food, afterwards.
I signed up for tasks online. I'll be outside, and I'm also helping cleaning up after the food.
Well, I'd like to help my church buddies clean up our beloved sanctuary. Can I still sign up?
Sure you can. Pick up an indoor task in Creeps Hall or an outdoor task out on the patio. We have tools if you don't, and food will be served in the Learning Center after the fun. Come join us.
Right after the service.
Please join me in our words to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish the light of this chalice, but not the light